ladies and gentlemen. Well, welcome to pop culture problems. I'm a little afraid right now,
Josh.
because I fear people with the last name Oderman.
Josh,
And-
it's going to be okay.
Who are you?
I'm John Oderman.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Pop Culture Problems. I'm Josh Nichols, and I'm here with John Oderman, and today we're going to be talking about phobias.
You know, this is something that we were talking about a little bit earlier before we went on air, and I was a little afraid that it wasn't going to be that good of a show. Is that a phobia?
I don't know if I'm sure a fear of failure is a phobia.
I've gotten so used to that, though, especially with this podcast, that I'm not really afraid of failure anymore.
Well, you know, but you have me. It's not just all about you. You have to think about me. I mean, if you fail, then then that could be bad, because it could be bad for me because I would fail.
Yeah, but that presupposes that I care about you and your feelings.
That is true. But I could have my own solo career. If you fail, it would make me better. So, a tichiophobia. Here's the thing about today's episode. We're going to stumble more words than we're usually stumbling, and we're also going to sound more like idiots than we typically do.
The thing that I really like about this is that I really have nothing to fear because Josh is the one with the computer screen in front of him, and he's the one that's going to have to fumble over these pronunciations.
Pronounce everything. A tichiophobia is the fear of failing. So that's a real fear. It's gotten a word assigned to it. Now I'm not sure the official nature of phobias, and not because I've heard of some phobias that have a blah 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 phobia name, but it says they're not officially recognized. So I don't know what medical organization defines which ones are official or not, but
I mean, you listen to the names of some of these, though, and it kind of thinks. I think the medical association that names these is just a bunch of drunk guys in a bar who are fumbling over words, and they just come up with the words. Because a tichophobia, I'm sure there's like some kind of like word source that like a word of origin that it comes from or something like that. But I'm not even sure if like a fear of failure should be classified as a phobia. Because I feel like that's like a pretty common, like, just human trait to, like, you don't want to fail.
well, okay.
But I guess that maybe it becomes a phobia once it becomes like so overwhelming that you can't function because of that.
Exactly. I think it's a level of the side effect of the disease. And I want to say this before we go any further. This episode is not to make fun or poke fun or to say that someone with a fear, it's not legitimate. Because when your brain kicks in those, what is it? What does it cause fear? What is the chemical? Endorphins make you happy. Endorphins make you sexy. I don't know. And then
Endorphophobos? I don't know. I made that up.
Yeah, but there's something that there's some chemical in your body that produces this fear, and when you are underneath the effects of this fear, it can be debilitating. And so I don't want to make light to say, somebody that's scared of blank, it's not legitimate. But some of these, the reason we're talking about it, it's hard to conceptualize, or it's hard to put yourself in the shoes of these people because we don't fear these things. So we're more talking about what we're afraid of, and then also taking a look at what other people are afraid of and thinking, I'm glad I'm not afraid of that. And likewise, I think they'd say they're glad they're not afraid of what we're afraid of.
Well, and I think it's also one of those things where it's hard to wrap around like how even some of these fears like develop. Like, what's the thing that what's the origin of that fear? How in the world could somebody be afraid of that? Because when would they have like crossed paths with that? Like that type of thing.
Yeah. Well, I think it's almost like a post-traumatic stress syndrome in some ways, like in adults, but I think a lot of this stuff probably happens when you're a kid. We talked about childhood movies. There's two movies, Silver Bullet and Trolls. When I saw them as a kid, I was petrified. I talk about them or hear the name now, and I have nightmares. And I think it's just a subconscious thing where my brain says, well, you were scared as a kid. Something's not right here. And so I see those images, and I'm like, ugh, and I have fear from it. So, again, it's what level of debilitation does this fear cause? Is it you break out in a rash and hives? Do you have a panic attack? Could it cause you a heart attack? I mean, it could potentially cause death if you are worked up enough, And so it is a serious topic.
Okay, so fear is a chain reaction in the brain It starts with a stressful stimulus and ends with a release of chemicals that cause a racing heart. Those chemicals are cortisol and adrenaline.
Adrenaline and cortisol.
Yeah, and
Cortisol,
that's
isn't
all
that-
controlled by the adrenal glands.
Doesn't cortisol? Is that? I've heard that in something else. Like, is that like Botox? Like, give me a little cortisol injection.
Yeah, I
sounds
yeah,
familiar.
yeah.
I don't
Cortisone, I think that is.
Oh, cortisol.
Yeah.
Well,
You get like a cortisone shot in your knee when you're old and you need to be able to walk.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. And
Or if you're an athlete on some kind of sports movie where you hurt your knee.
would a cortisonal phobia be a fear of cortisone injection?
That's probably some word that doesn't sound anything like cortisone.
Okay. Well, let's let's talk about some phobias because I'm some of these again. I have a hard time of putting myself in the shoes of the people. Like, for instance, selenophobia is the fear of the moon.
Okay.
So,
All right.
people that fear the moon. So, I mean, tell me what would you say? How would you fear the moon? Like, what's scary about that?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like that's pretty reasonable, especially if you like. That's something that I think could naturally develop if you're just paying attention to, like, urban myths and urban legends and things like that. Like, there's a lot of mythological pagan symbolism that is related to the moon. Maybe you are kind of familiar with that stuff, so you fear the moon because of you've heard some of that stuff as you were growing up. Maybe you don't like a change in tides. Maybe you're afraid of a lunar eclipse.
Well, and I'm thinking about the whole thing I go back to with a lot of fear sim from when you're a child. Maybe you were scared of the dark. The first thing you see in the darkness is the shining light. You don't know what it is. It could be scary because it's unknown.
Yeah.
And that could stick with you.
Maybe you had a run-in with a werewolf.
Okay. That's true, because werewolves are real. Oh, we gotta have an episode. We've talked about monsters, like movies, but we should just talk about like whether we feel like cryptozoology.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, put it on the list. Okay, so I'm gonna run through phobias. I'm just gonna run through maybe like 5 of them or so, and you see if you want to comment on them. Okay.
Okay.
So, ornithophobia.
Okay.
The fear of birds, especially pigeons. It says. So I don't know why it's pigeons.
Yeah. Why specifically pigeons? That's very interesting.
Equinophobia, fear of horses, and again, this is where we get the equine is horse. So there's some word. Arachnophobia, comes from spiders.
Great movie, by the way.
John
Goodman, fantastic.
Don't remember a lot about it.
Yeah.
I remember not thinking it was great, but
I saw it when I was a kid. I loved it. I don't know why. I think it was just because of John Goodman.
Okay.
Because John Goodman is a good man.
Here's another aphephobia, APHE phobia, aphephobia, and I almost would I would categorize this as Oderman phobia.
Okay.
And I think your wife has this. The phobia causes people to feel afraid when touched, and so your wife would call that Oderman phobia.
Holy cow!
But and I get that too. Like, especially people like. Fear of bacteria and viruses, and that.
Oh yeah. That's another one that I think is
you know?
reasonable. Like, if you're an Alfred Hitchcock fan, the which one was that one again? The bird one,
the ornithophobia.
Yeah, ornithophobia.
Ornithophobia.
Yeah. Okay.
That's one I can relate to.
Yeah, I mean, see, like, there have been times where I've went out into my front yard and I'm like mowing the lawn or something like that, and I walk by a tree that's got a nest in it, and I'm getting dive bombed by birds.
Okay.
They are territorial.
You have no idea. I had a war with a bird. Okay, there was our door. Okay, going into the house. There was a detached garage. There was a driveway in front of that garage, and across the street there was a mailbox. I say all this so that you can get a map in your mind. I go to my front door, going to enter, and I notice on the light, the little light outside of our front door, right above the front door, so like I could touch the light, there was a bird's nest right on top of it. Don't want to knock the bird's nest over. It has eggs in it. I don't want to destroy it. I want to be
You love children.
bird murderer.
Yeah.
And so I go in the house. come out of the house, go in the house, come out of the house, etc. All of a sudden, at one point, the mama bird or the daddy bird are there. And I would go in the house and they would start dive bombing me. And they would start hitting the window. They would smash into the window trying to get in to break the glass. Here, I get in my car, leave for work, come back, start to get out of my car until I hear a thud on the windshield. They were dive bombing the car, like hitting the windshield.
How far away from your door was this?
Well, okay, so like picture a door, a gap of maybe 15 feet.
Okay.
That's where the start of the garage was. And then the garage itself, the length of the garage, so at least a car length.
Yeah.
And then the driveway. And I parked in the driveway because it was a one-star garage. And me and my girlfriend parked in there. So it would come over there.
They were waiting for you.
But it gets better. Checking the mail one day across the street. And I feel whoosh over my head. And look up and the bird is swarming around me and dive bombing me. It was terrifying.
Did you just hit your stomach and just like army crawl back to your car?
No, I actually I went to a little touristy town and they had in the tourist shop this like buffalo hat.
Uh-huh.
It was like this like big fur hat with buffalo horns, and I remember having that in my car. And so I left it in my car and I would use it. I would put it on so they would hit the top and they wouldn't hit me. You know, they were after this furness.
That is terrifying.
It is terrifying.
And here's the thing about birds. They have beaks that are sharp.
Oh, they have crimson talons that will rip you.
And they're crimson from all the blood.
They will rip you from navel to toe. That's what they'll do. That is what they'll... And
I mean, if you get into it with a bird, it's like drawing and quartering. I mean, they'll hold you to the ground and they will gut you.
Speaking of navels... Fear of navels.
That is a fear. That's a thing, huh?
Omphallophobia? I'm trying to say these with fluidity and like, or like a French, I go, omphallophobia, like make it sound sexy, but fear of navels.
So like these people would have had like a really hard time in like the late 90s, 2000s when like bare midriffs were like a major thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think they'd have time starting with World War II. Really? Because that's when the bikinis became into existence.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Because they were trying to save the polyester nylon materials for the war
fabric,
efforts. Yeah. And so they made bikinis to make them...
Where do you think that originates from?
What do you mean?
Like the fear of navels.
I don't know. I think I've heard it being like related to like umbilical cords and kind of that... connection to the womb, and it's...
Well, I've always heard people like say to their kids like, oh, don't play with your navel because if it's like it's tied in a knot, and if you undo the knot, all your guts will fall out.
Wow, good parenting. Good parenting. I just.
Oh, so I shouldn't say that to my daughter?
If you want to be a sadistic parent, maybe.
Because belly buttons do kind of look like a balloon, like after you tie them, they have like it's kind of. You know what I'm talking?
I
you know what I'm talking about, right?
See your belly button because this is not how normal belly buttons look. I don't think. I think that you're wrong.
It's not like hanging out of like my navel.
It's like the 40-year-old virgin when he's talking about being with a woman and he clearly has no idea. He's like, yeah, those breasts like a bag of sand and oh, it's so good. And you're like, yeah, navel's like. It looks like a balloon. Like, no, you have no idea. Yours is the only one that looks like that. You're the only person that has that deformity that you were describing. You're like, goodness.
Oh, jeez.
Like, I don't understand people that like sit on the toilet. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, it comes out the front. No. Like what? No, you're the only person that it comes out the front. Like, that's not real.
Now, those people that have the fear of navels, though, do you think innies or outies are worse for them?
Yeah, I would say that the outies worse because again, it's something visible. It would touch fabric. Now, me, I have, and I'm gonna just be honest. I have like the Grand Canyon of belly buttons.
Oh, well, yeah. So
it's just like, I mean, I stick a chicken drummy in there from the restaurant. Take an extra one from the buffet. I mean, I just put it right in there. I remember
this little pouch.
Oh, I'll find stuff in there. I'm like, look at this.
I found lint before, but I've never found like food.
Oh, corn on the cob. I mean, if it's just a whole corn on the cob in there. Like, save it for later. Oh, look, an M&M. Like, great. I keep it there.
Tasty.
I remember as a kid, one thing that I did, and my mom told me not to do that ever again. I remember sitting in a chair and like laying back in the chair, but with my neck kind of crooked, and I had my belly button as flat as I could, and so that I could pour the glue inside of the belly button. I had like a little kid's bottle of glue, and I was like pouring
Elmer's
the
glue into the belly button.
In the belly button. And I probably still have some in there, because I'm sure you can't get all that out.
Yeah.
Oh, what was I thinking? So
that was one of the most terrifying things, though, about having a baby. Is like the umbilical cord is attached to the the belly button, the navel, and like you have to like make sure that like you keep it clean and that it's eventually going to fall off. But like they tell you like if that thing gets infected, like that's really bad, and like you have to keep it clean. And then when it falls off, it bleeds a little bit. And you're like, oh my god, my kid's going to bleed out of the navel.
The umbilical cord won't fall off if you use enough glue.
Use
true. Enough glue, and then it won't fall off. I mean, that's what I was doing.
You're trying to build your umbilical cord back up.
Absolutely. Now, I'm just going to say this. Apologies and disclaimers. No, not disclaimers. I mean, no spoiler alert here. Apologies profusely for anyone with this fear, because we've been telling some horror stories.
You know what, though? I want to hear from these people. If we have any listeners that have one of these fears, I'd like to know what your life is like.
Yeah. Tell us and say, this is where I'm coming from. This is why it is. And again, I don't think any of these are inherently bad or wrong or anything.
Absolutely.
Everybody has their own fears. I think
some people are deathly afraid of clowns.
Yeah. John, why don't you tell me what you once told me about your greatest fear?
We were talking about fears, and a lot of people have fears of heights and stuff. I don't have a particular fear of heights. I don't have a particular fear of clowns, but I do have a pretty great fear of being on the top of a tall building and being pushed off of it by a clown.
It's so specific. What is the clown? What type of clown? Is it the hobo clown? Is it the tramp clown? Is it the sad clown? Is it the happy clown? Is it the scary clown? Because let's get more specific, if we could.
Probably a sad clown.
Okay, because I mean, I don't want to
like
pay all
a
the
clown
money.
that is so dark inside, and he's just trying to find some joy in his life.
And pushing you off the building is
he's
the
trying
only
to do
way.
whatever he can. He's already tried all these other things, so he's going to push me off the roof to see if that's the thing that gets him to the joy level.
It's just such a specific fear that it makes me not like you as a person. It just makes me judge you.
Well, what's your greatest fear?
I would say my greatest fear is death or bodily harm. And this is where I get
That's not a fear.
Yeah, it is, because here's the thing. When I'm a survivalist, I want to survive. And so for me, let's talk about any of the fears that we've talked about, okay? I wouldn't say that I'm particularly scared of clowns. But when we had that clown scare, I don't know, a year or two ago,
where they were showing up everywhere, and they had
showing up
holding
in
bloody axes.
Yeah, bloody axes. Okay, that might incite a little fear of clowns for me, because I think that there's possible death or injury involved. I'm not necessarily scared of being up high. If you say, I'm going to put you on the top of this building, I'm not going to drop you, you're not going to die, I would have no problem with that. It's similar to that kind of concept of breaking the law. Are you okay with speeding 5 miles over the speed limit?
Yeah.
Well, why? It's a law, but you don't think you're going to get caught. If you knew that you were going to be pulled over, would you do it?
No.
No. And so if I know that I'm not going to die, if somebody assures me, I'm not going to be scared of it. So some of these fears, let's say...
Yeah, but you said that, you've told me in the past that when you go to amusement parks, you don't do so well with uppy downy.
I don't do well with uppy downy. I'm okay with spinny spinny, but the uppy downy is the motion that I kind of feel like I'm going to have a heart attack.
Okay.
And it's just the motion. I can go on a swing set. I love swing sets. I'm not scared of swing sets.
But couldn't you boil all of these down to a fear of death? I feel like you could, because somebody that's afraid of clowns, they're deathly afraid of clowns. They're afraid of that clown because they're afraid that clown's going to kill them.
I don't know.
So you might be the most fearful person alive, Josh. You might have the most phobias.
I don't think that that's true, though, because people might, they just might get creeped out, or they might be unsettled by the look of a clown or something, but they might not be scared the clown's gonna kill them. Okay, there's a fear out there of being without your cellular phone, and I think that that's something that's becoming more relevant. Nomophobia?
Okay.
Yeah, it's fear of being without mobile phone coverage. That does not scare me. Okay?
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Like, I'm not feared by it, but
it scares me that that's like a diagnosed fear, though.
Well, but here's the thing. The problem with this, for me, and this is where I go back to trying to defend my position, is that I'm not scared to death that this mobile phone coverage is going to cause me bodily harm or injury or death. I'm not scared of that. Now, you could say that I have nomophobia, or this fear of mobile phone coverage, if I was on a desert island with no bars. Because I would fear that my lack of communication would cause me not to be able to get the outside world and be safe.
But this is where, like, and I'm sorry to anybody that might have that fear listening, but this is like one of those ones that I feel like there's a bunch of drunk guys sitting around a table just deciding that, we're going to name a new phobia after this. And they're just like taking things out of the ether and saying, okay, we haven't named this phobia yet. What would this one be called?
But I'm gonna challenge your thinking here a bit, because you're an old man. You're almost dead.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm 83 years old.
And so think. I had a woman that I worked with, and she was just shocked and awed because her son heard a dial tone for the first time. He picked up a landline phone.
Oh, wow, yeah. Okay.
He had never picked up a landline phone.
Yeah.
Why would he have?
Yeah, exactly.
And he thought the phone was broken or something because he heard a dial tone. Kids today are growing up in a world where they have never known what a landline is. They've never seen one. They've never held one. They've always been connected. I mean, look at parents that are giving iPads to their kids.
So, I mean, there is like a fear of being disconnected from the world. And I can see that.
Especially when it's all that you've known. Mm-hmm. And so I think that fear might be a generational thing of kids that feel a sort of panic, and because it's if I were to say people who fear public speaking or things like that, if you fear isolation, well, that's a symptom of isolation. If you cannot connect with anybody mobily, and that is your primary way of talking to people, it might be an isolatory thing. Isolatory, is that a word?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, sure. So it might be isolating, and so that
okay, I gotcha.
And so I think that's more of a new thing that's coming about with the kind of the onslaught of technology, is that people fear that isolation. I went to Las Vegas, took my nephew when he turned 18, and I had a moment where I thought, if we are mugged, the only saving grace to get us home, because I wouldn't know how to drive home.
Yeah, okay.
I wouldn't know, how to. I couldn't rent a car and go home myself. I wouldn't know the number to my bank. I couldn't look up the bank's phone number. I don't know anyone's phone number, even my girlfriend who I live with. I don't know her number. The only person I could call is my mom's workplace that she so greatly still works at since I was a kid, because that's the only phone number I remember. If she had changed jobs in the last 20 years, I would have been screwed. I'd be screwed. I said, if we're mugged, what would we do? I don't know who to call. And that was such a weird feeling, because I mean, you see people who are arrested.
Yeah.
And they don't have their ID on them. And what if they thought that there was a mugging, and the mugger ran off, and I'm standing next there, and he also stole my wallet? They thought maybe I did it.
Yeah.
I couldn't prove I didn't. I couldn't phone a friend with my one phone call. I would have nothing. I would be SOL. I mean, that's scary.
Sure.
Yeah, you're like, bah, I could get out of that situation.
Well, I feel like the cops could help.
I carried
track down your mother.
Well, sometimes cops are corrupt. I mean, you've seen how
maybe
to make
the cops
a murderer.
are the ones that mugged you.
You don't know.
Yeah,
I'm not saying.
you're right.
I'm not.
I have seen Making a Murderer.
I'm not disparaging the boys in blue, because a lot of cops are great. Most cops are great. I'm just saying.
Is there a phobia for fear of being framed?
Ooh.
Fear of being framed by the police in Wisconsin. That's
Just
fairly.
specifically.
Maybe that's a little too specific, like my own fear.
Well, no, it's curdophobia. Cheese
Okay.
curds in Wisconsin. Paranoia, fear of being framed of something that I didn't do. I don't think I don't see a name
So it's
associated.
just like paranoia.
Well, maybe it's called. Yeah. I would say so.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know that there's a specific name for it, but I could see that being a fear, being scared that would happen.
Yeah. So what else we got here?
Well, let's see. On the list of phobias, boom. They have I went on this great website that has them categorized. So there's fears of certain physical objects.
Okay.
Autophobia.
Fear of cars?
No. Fear of flutes.
Whoa.
So,
That's another unique one. If there are any autophobes out there, please contact us. We'd like to interview you for the show.
Dextrophobia.
Fear of fingers?
No. The fear... this is people with this phobia do not like having objects situated to their right. Like, it's a very specific thing.
Yeah.
And it's like I have a hard time in my mind like getting to that point, but I am very sympathetic at this point because when I think about I don't want to die horrifically or like I don't want to be buried alive in a box. That's an irrational fear that I have because what are the chances that I'm going to be put into a box and be alive? And so having that fear is probably irrational. And I think that's where phobias really come into place. A fear of death.
Cancel the coffin for Josh's house later tonight.
Cancel the coffin. I think, and I'm not a medical doctor. I've been trained. I'm not a psychologist. I'm going to say that anything that ends in the word phobia or ends in the phrase phobia is irrational fears.
Yeah, sure.
In a lot of ways, because fearing things to your right, fearing flutes, those are probably irrational fears. Even, let's say for an instance, and I'm not trying to be insensitive, but let's say that someone was involved in a flute homicide. Their family was murdered with flutes. What are the chances that you are going to be murdered with a flute? That's a pretty one-off chance. So it's an irrational fear to think that is going to occur again. And so...
That's a Law and Order I want to see.
What was the weapon? It was a flute. A flute. And there's just like... The walls are just... They're like, paint the walls red. Because cleaning up will be way more expensive. It's like this terrible scene. I just really hope this has not happened to somebody. Because, I say things in jest, but I don't... Okay.
If it has, once again, please let us know. Because there needs to be like a Netflix special on you or something.
Okay. Papyrophobia. 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 Papyrophobia.
Paper? Fear
of
paper.
paper.
Okay.
Yeah. Anxiety of paper.
That'd be a tough one. That would be a really tough
yeah.
one. How do you live your life like that?
I don't know. Domatophobia?
Okay. Dominoes?
No. It is the fear of houses and being inside houses.
Jeez.
These are...
Is like an apartment okay?
I'm not a doctor. I can't possibly speak to that.
I think that should be the stinger for this episode. We're not doctors.
Dun, 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 meow. We're not doctors. Okay, one more here. I know I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but this is the only way I know how to read it. Urethrophobia.
Fear of urinating?
See, that's where I went. I thought, I have a fear of urethras or of urinating.
Yeah.
No, the fear of red lights.
Jeez. That's, I want to know the origins of these.
Well, they are very...
But, the names, how do you come up with the names?
Well, I'm sure, the word euro or the extension
the
euro
paper one made
Latin
sense.
Word.
Papyrus, yeah.
Well, but you don't know Latin.
Yeah.
So you don't know every origin of every word.
How do you know I don't know Latin?
Because you're an idiot.
Wow.
You're
not a doctor.
You've proven it time and time again. But John, here's what I'm saying. of all the phobias we've heard about, these things have names. But can you tell me that any of these, the fear of red lights, the fear of being in a house, the fear of paper, the fear of having objects orientated on the right side of you, are any more ridiculous than fearing a sad clown is going to push you off a building? Are any of them even close to that? Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see if John's truly scared of sad clowns pushing him off a building before the next episode. Ladies, we'll see you next week on Pop Culture Problem.